Hi, it's Kevin Bates here, and a follow-on to my previous video where I was looking at what happened to transactions when the 0.7 versus 0.8 Bitcoin fork happened. And I think you need to have a bit of an understanding as to how transactions work. So when you want to spend some Bitcoin, you create a transaction and you sign it and you submit it to the network. But typically what you're doing is you're submitting it to just one node on the network, and the idea is that that node will then forward it on to all the other nodes, and some of those nodes are being run by miners, so they will pick up the transaction and put it in a block. And therefore, if you have a fork, and provided all the nodes are still communicating with each other regardless of whether they're running 0.7 or 0.8, then the transaction should make its way onto both chains, the 0.7 chain and the 0.8 chain, and therefore a double spend will not be occurring, because it doesn't matter from the receiver's point of view whether the 0.7 or 0.8 chain wins, they still end up owning that coin. So the problem arises if, for example, there's a break in the communications protocol and the 0.7 and 0.8 nodes are no longer communicating. This is called a partition. And if the network partitions, so you have these two networks, then you have the opportunity for a double spend, because you can submit your transaction to a 0.8 node and a different transaction spending the same coins to a 0.7 node, and now you have a break in the reality between the two chains. And this is actually what happened in one particular case, where somebody spent about $10,000 worth of Bitcoin that only made it into 0.8, and then redirected it to himself on the 0.7 chain because he noticed it hadn't been picked up yet. So I'm not exactly clear what was happening in terms of the network there. And the other thing is, you can also artificially engineer this. You can create a transaction and not release it to the network. You can just keep it, and if you're a miner, make sure that it goes into a block anyway, and then the transaction is not public until it actually turns up in a block, because what's called the mempool, the part of the Bitcoin software that holds on to transactions, deletes them after a certain period of time. I don't know whether it's a day or a week, but it's not, those transactions are not held there for years on end. So a lot of interesting subtle stuff that goes on inside this network, and it was well worth a deeper look. Hope you found that interesting. See you in the next video soon. Bye for now.